Welcome everyone to another episode, another rendition of DylanLasagna Live. It is your host, the one, the only, of course, DylanLasagna. What's up? What's up? How you all doing on this Friday? It's Memorial Day weekend. I don't know if any of you have plans like during this quarantine-filled Memorial Day weekend. For wrestling fans, Double or Nothing is this weekend. For all Elite Wrestling wrestling fans, it's AEW Double or Nothing tomorrow night. It was supposed to happen in Las Vegas, but obviously because of the coronavirus pandemic, that's no longer happening in Vegas. But I don't know if AEW specified it would. They already specified it was going to be in the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium. It's going to take place throughout there. So yeah, that's happening tomorrow. If my time is correct, it's going to start at 4:00 with the buy-in. So for all you wrestling fans, yeah, Double or Nothing tomorrow at 4:00 Pacific, my time, 7 Eastern, for those in the East. But anyway, this is episode number 58 of DylanLasagna Live. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you give the podcast, this episode, a thumbs up, because it'll push out for the recommended. And make sure you turn on your post notifications, so you'll know every time I go live, post a new video, or put up a new community tab post, and all that good stuff. Speaking of new video, I put up a new video on my channel a couple days ago on Wednesday, I believe. Let me pull it up here real quick. A little shameless plugging here, by the way. Let me go to my third one here. There we go. Next to obviously the podcast, we got a video here where I talk about the Edge versus Orton match at Backlash. Not so much about the match itself, but how WWE is marketing it as the greatest wrestling match ever. So I don't know why they're doing that, but if you want to go watch the video, I recommend you do so. But yeah, make sure you do all the fancy stuff, like comment, subscribe if you're not already, turn on the post notifications, and yeah, here we go with episode number 58 of DylanLasagna Live. As with the ongoing pandemic, there's not much to talk about during these times. News is pretty light. The only thing I've been doing these times of days is just like seeing YouTube collapse each and every day. We've obviously got Kappa. We've got advertisers pulling in and out. And now the YouTube drama is like starting to heat up. I've actually been following YouTube drama nowadays. Whether it's from the commentary community or from random ass shit, you name it. And there's this thing going on with Ethan Klein or H3A3 and Keemstar. They're having this beef and they're causing each other to lose sponsors, and so it's like kind of setting a bad precedence, I guess. So if like now people can go out and attack each other or cause someone to go broke by going after their sponsors. So that's not a good thing, but I don't really have much to comment. I really don't have much to comment on that situation, on the current YouTube drama situation as of now. But all I know is, that was a pretty big, that's a pretty ongoing situation. But in the end, some of the YouTube drama is just drama, but some of the YouTube drama can lead to big changes on the platform, like what we see with YouTube Wake Up last year that ended up being the whole COPPA situation where now we have to mark our videos as for kids, and if you mark it for kids, then your channel revenue is pretty much dead. Your comments are disabled. You can't save your videos into a playlist, and etc. etc. And then there was another YouTube drama I mentioned a couple of times here, the Susie Liu drama, where she was false flagging people, and like false copyright striking people, and yet she was watching full unedited episodes of anime, and all that good stuff. So a lot of interesting things happening, and whether I'm thinking of doing a case study of whether or not this kind of stuff is fake news or it's legit, leading to somewhere. Like some of it leads to actual change on the platform. So I don't know. Maybe I might do a case study for my my side gig that I don't do on YouTube. But we'll see. We'll see. I have to look more into it. But anyway, that was one of my random tidbits for this week. My other random tidbit is I want to pay my respects to someone I haven't really heard from, like in the wrestling community, to someone that I haven't seen that fairly often, I haven't heard from in a good while, and that's Shad Gaspard. Yeah, guys. Shad Gaspard unfortunately passed away on Wednesday. It was on Sunday. It was Shad Gaspard. On Sunday he was at a beach in Los Angeles with his kid, swimming, and they got caught in a riptide, and the lifeguards told him to save his kid first, and then they saved the kid. They saved his son, and along with the kids that were there with him. But then Shad Gaspard got caught in the riptide wave, and he disappeared until Wednesday, where the lifeguard, local police, and other lifeguards found his body, and he was pronounced dead immediately. And it was a very crappy situation. It really sucked. Because from what I heard, outside of the wrestling, outside of being a wrestler, from the stories that I've seen on Twitter, on social media, Shad seemed to be a very great guy to people. He was he seemed like a people first kind of person. He thinks of others over himself, and that's a person you always want to be. You want to think of others more than yourself. But yeah, he always looked he always thought about others, and he was always and the fact that he sacrificed his own life so his son can still live his is it's sad, but it sucks, but at the same time it's it was a really good deed. So my thoughts and prayers are with Shad's spouse and his kid during this time. What Shad did during his wrestling career, he was with JTG. So most of you know he was in that tag team with Crime Time, underrated tag team in the late 2000s. I don't know why they never won the tag team titles. They should have won. They should have had at least a tag team title reign, because they were they had a pretty good gimmick. Despite being booked poorly as they did. They had a pretty like generic stereotypical gimmick, but their charisma made it work. They really made it work. And then the team broke up like in 2010, and then I from what I read, they reunited in the Indies, and then like outside of that, Shad was an actor in some of the movies. Most recently he was a stunt double in Birds of Prey. And I get this, I watched Get Hard, one of my favorite movies, and it's like I didn't even know he was in that movie, where in the scene where Will Ferrell has to go try to beat up on people. Shad Gaspard was one of those people that Will Ferrell tried to like punk out, and that's crazy. I did not know that. So yeah, it was just a really unfortunate situation, and my thoughts or prayers are with Shad's family during this time. So prayers up to Shad's family. But yeah. All right, let's move on to the main topics for today. We only got two for today. We've only got two. So again, news is pretty light this week. The topics are pretty light because I really don't have much to say, and honestly, again, yeah, news is pretty light because of the pandemic, and I really don't want to talk about anything coronavirus related. So let's talk about the topics that are on the thumbnail. Dark Side of the Ring. I watched a couple of episodes. Like I watched the Chris Benoit one. I watched the Montreal Screwjob one. Those two were pretty good episodes. And then on Tuesday was the season 2 finale, which was about Owen Hart. The Owen Hart incident back at Over the Edge in 1999. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this particular incident, let me do my best to break it down for you, because I'm not much of a wrestling historian, but you know what? I'm going to do my best to break it down for you all. So, a day from tomorrow, like it'll be May 23rd. So it'll be the 21st anniversary of when the Owen Hart incident happened, and it was the May 23rd was the day that the whole Owen Hart incident went horribly wrong at Over the Edge. So, for those who are unaware, Owen Hart was supposed to make this superhero-like entrance, which was supposed to see him descend down the ring from the arena rafters in his blue blazer gimmick. The blue blazer gimmick came back. They even tested it, as I'll explain later, a couple months earlier. But at Over the Edge in 1999, like Owen Hart fell like over 70 feet from the rafters, chest first, onto one of the turnbuckles, and he was dead. He died. So as soon as that stunt went horribly wrong, the pay-per-view was delayed for 15 minutes. Whether you watched this live back in 99 or were in the crowd, or you're watching this, like the incident with that before watching Dark Side of the Ring on YouTube, you watched the live, like you watched the feat of Over the Edge from 99. You would hear Jim Ross saying things like, and I quote, Owen Hart was scheduled to take on the Godfather for the Intercontinental title. Owen Hart fell from the rafters. This is not part of the entertainment tonight. This is as real can be here. So 15 minutes passed by. Owen Hart was stretchered out of the arena and taken to the Truman Medical Center in Kansas City, and where an hour later he passed away from his injuries. Now, that's what Jim Ross said, and nobody in the arena knew what was happening with Owen Hart, and because WWE decided to continue the show when what they could have done was stop the show, but they didn't. Vince McMahon elected to move forward with the show, and if you watched Over the Edge, whether it was back in '99 or on your VHS or on the WWE Network, you could see that the wrestlers that had matches that night, they were visibly shaken. They were ready to break down crying because of the Owen news. So WWE, the next night on Raw, WWE would hold the Raw is Owen special, which would gain the highest rating in Raw history, but that's less important in this background information. So in this episode, wrestlers would share their memoriams about Owen Hart and for the night. But weeks after the funeral, Owen's widow Martha sued the WWE for causing Owen's death with a defective harness system and a poorly planned stunt. And over a year later, in 2000, the lawsuit ended with an $18 million settlement in favor of Martha, her children, and Owen's parents. So that was some background information on what happened with the Owen situation prior to this Dark Side of the Ring episode airing on Tuesday. And when I learned about this, I can't recall when I saw this. I think it was around the time YouTube was still like in its young developing stages. I would say in 2009 or 2010, when I was able to use the computer more often. I'll just say that when I was able to use the computer more often, I remember watching this, and it was like one of the saddest events I witnessed like ever. And that's not like one of those happy like emotional ones, because like no, this was a real situation, like I like witnessing death, and until like before I got older, I didn't know who Owen Hart was. I didn't like know who like he was prior to this incident, like until I saw this incident on YouTube. But obviously when I got older, I saw his matches, including the one at WrestleMania 10, and then that's pretty much like prior to Dark Side of the Ring. That's all I knew about Owen Hart, like, and the situation at the time. It's like that was again until Dark Side of the Ring released this season 2 finale based on the Owen Hart tragedy on Tuesday. So now we get into Dark Side of the Ring. What they talked about. They talked about a lot of things like in this episode. I really recommend all of you to watch this, whether you're a wrestling fan or not, whether you're a wrestling fan or not. I really recommend you watch this. I really recommend you watch this episode because it sheds some light on like the WWE in all shapes and forms. So I'm not going to talk about everything that happened in this episode because there was a lot to dissect, and a lot to take in. I'm not kidding. There was seriously a lot to take in this episode. I'm not joking. So I'm just going to be discussing like what I took away from it personally. And then after those takeaways, I'm going to go into my final thoughts and analysis on this episode. So let me do a quick check on the chat and see how many people are in here. Before we do a deep dive into this Dark Side of the Ring episode, shall we? And again, make sure you if you're not already subscribed, comment again if you're in the live chat. Comment your thoughts on the Owen Hart Dark Side of the Ring episode. What your takeaways are from it, and all that good stuff. All right, I think we are ready. We are ready to go. So there will be a few images that I will show to represent my takeaways from the episode. But yeah, let's get started. Let's get started, shall we? Okay. So the first takeaway I had from this that I learned more about Owen Hart than I ever did from his match, like from the WWE, like from YouTube. I especially learned in this. I especially learned from this episode by Vice, that Owen never really wanted to be a wrestler. He didn't really he grew up in a wrestling family, but I would say he cared about it a lot less than Bret Hart did, because they, like, people like Jim Cornette, Martha, and Jim Ross were talking about how Owen was more of a family man, was more of a father than a wrestler. Like, as we learned throughout the episode, that even though Owen Hart was one of the best technical wrestlers in professional wrestling, we saw through home videos that every time he had to leave home because of wrestling, he was often very disappointed. He didn't want to leave. Like, I think at one point in time, his son Oj, he had I'm not sure if it was like a train convention, because like Oj liked playing with toy trains, and there was supposed to be like I don't know if it was a train convention or something, like he mentioned, like during his childhood over one weekend, and Owen didn't want to miss it. He went. I think he mentioned that he contacted WWE and said, "Hey, I can't." It's like there's this specific convention that that my son wants to be at, and my son wants me to be at, and I can't, and it means the world to him, and I can't miss it. So that's how much his family meant Owen. That's how much family meant to Owen, And another thing about family for Owen Hart, it's like, again, even though Owen liked wrestling, he just saw it as a way to provide. The fact that wrestling was just merely a source of income for him and his family, that fact grew for Owen, because once he started getting that big push following his 1994 or 5, I think, King of the Ring win, his schedule started to increase. What's up, noob? How have you been? Yeah, it's been a while. Where have you been? But anyway, yeah, it's like Martha Hart mentioned that Owen was gone for over 250 days a year, and it was 10 days. I think it was 10 days of Owen would be wrestling, and then 3 days that Owen would be home. So yeah, it's like I feel like Owen really Owen liked the wrestling business, but it was not his long-term future. Owen cared more about his family than he did about wrestling. So that's my first takeaway from this episode of Dark Side of the Ring. I'm sorry to hear that, noob. I hope you feel better. Before I get into my second takeaway, to answer your question, noob, not at this moment in time. I will not do a speed run of San Andreas. Not at this moment in time. After 8 hours on the PC, no, I don't think I can do that, at least for now. No, I can't do it. Anyway, my second takeaway from this Dark Side of the Ring episode was that WWE couldn't figure out what to do with Owen during the Attitude Era. It was like they were able to figure, like, they found a gem in Owen. He was a technically gifted wrestler, but like Jim Cornette, like Jim Ross, and others have said that Owen just wasn't able to fit in during the Attitude Era. So it was like Vince was looking for wrestlers to not to perform as wrestlers anymore. He wanted to perform as entertainers, according to the multiple people that spoke in this episode. So it was noted by the likes of Cornette, Ross, Jericho, and others like that Owen lacked an over the top personality. He had a great wrestling background, but again, there was no over the top character, even with his earlier rendition of the Blue Blazer. That aside, WWE tried to give him new storylines to help him adapt into the new philosophy of the Attitude Era. Like there was one particular example that crossed my mind was this cheating storyline, like Owen cheating on his wife for Deborah, and I don't like that didn't. If I did watch that storyline in particular, I don't think it would have worked at all for Owen. They mentioned that Owen just didn't want to give in to the Attitude Era philosophy, and you know what? I can't blame him. You know, he was a really good wrestler, and it's like even during this period, WWE wasted him. You know, it's like I feel like it's like WWE let him WWE held on to him because it's like, as they mentioned, that WWE didn't want a Hart family member to leave the WWE. But it's like, where else was Owen Hart gonna go? You know, it was like Owen Hart, if he was still alive, he could have waited till maybe 4 years down the road, and maybe make a jump to TNA. But we will never know, because So what WWE elected to do was revive the Blue Blazer. Now with a whole superhero gimmick and make it more comedic, and there's now they introduced a spoof of Sting by having Owen Hart descend down the rafters, but in a more comedic manner. So they're gonna have him intentionally get stuck on the safety harness before he can get down. So they tried this at Survivor Series 1998. So Owen was getting released, was descending down the rafters. He was attached to a rig, to a safety rig. He looked fine, for comedic effect, actually, not obviously, I retract that. For comedic effect, he was stuck, And then I don't know if that was Al Snow or someone else. I don't know. Someone was punching him, and Owen couldn't get out of the harness. So they tried that. It worked, seemingly, and from what I was told during the documentary, through the eyes of the documentary, just watching it, they never tried. They didn't try it until Over the Edge. So now we get to this is where we get to my third takeaway, the lead up to Over the Edge. So Martha Hart, Owen's widow, talks about the rigging company that Owen was using for the Blue Blazer. The one that WWE used at Survivor Series was a top rigging company that rigged the likes of, if I recall, Elton John, the Rolling Stones, and worked. And I think Martha also mentioned they worked for Disney as well. So the problem is Martha was worried because Owen had no control over the rigging. So, when they were going to do the stunt again at Over the Edge, this time they're going to do a quick release like Sting in WCW. Martha received a call from a WWE representative saying that they needed measurements for a safety vest for Owen for the Blue Blazer stunt in Kansas City. So, for good reason, Martha was concerned because Owen was just with them, and she questioned why they didn't do it while he was with them, and WWE just wrote it in. That was their reasoning. They just wrote it in, Now, where's that last minute decision making remind me of? That reminds me of today's WWE. But anyway, I digress. Martha went on to ask who's rigging him. But the rep said, don't worry, because they mentioned that they're bringing in the top rigging company from Los Angeles, and like Martha would say, and we all knew what had happened, they didn't. They did not. So they're gonna, throughout the night before Over the Edge, actually the day of, Owen, who is scheduled to face the Godfather for the IC title, he rehearses the match with the Godfather. That happens, and then as soon as he's done with rehearsing with the Godfather, he is gonna practice the stunt where he's supposed to descend down the rafters as the Blue Blazer. And Jim Ross mentions that Owen was not like his normal self that day. So normally they described Owen as vibrant, like a prankster. He's fun to be around with, pretty much. But that day they described Owen as pretty nervous. Martha also mentioned that Owen was not one to question the safety, not to want to question his own safety, but judging from Jim Ross's comments, it was pretty clear that Owen was pretty concerned for his safety. Was pretty concerned for his safety because it wasn't like a well-known rigging company. I would be nervous too if they pulled a last minute decision on how they're gonna properly set this up. So anyway, that was my third takeaway from this. My fourth one is the day of Over the Edge. So it was before the first match of the night, and then Owen Hart heads up to the rafters, so he can get hooked up, to do his Blue Blazer stunt, and he gets rigged, and then prior to this, there was a pre-recorded Blue Blazer promo playing for the crowd, and then once or I think it was either once that was done or like as the entrances were supposed to start, Jerry Lawler nudges Jim Ross because he saw Owen Hart falling fast. So it was at that moment that everything started to fall apart. Everything was sliding down really bad. So the whole fall, you guys have to remember, not the unedited version, not the one on the WWE Network. None of the fall was televised live because, well, you don't want to see that live. Come on. And then we had former WWE referee Jimmy Corderas. He mentioned that he felt a wisp when the accident happened. And once he saw Owen in the ring the way he was, flat on his back, not breathing, hell, he was even bleeding. He called for help. And like I said before, things were starting to get really bad from there. Jim Ross, for example, Jim Ross didn't know what to say other than Owen Hart had a bad fall and he'll keep the viewers posted. The crowd kept panning. There was a lot of crowd pans because WWE didn't want to show what was going on in the ring as Jim Ross was talking. And then as JR kept talking, he was getting told in the mic that to give more updates when there was no updatable material. I'm like, what? Like, what is WWE doing? It was like, what are they doing? It's like, how dumb can they be? It's like a man just fell 70 feet from the arena rafters, and JR has no time to process this. And it's like, and they're still working on Owen in the ring, and WWE saying WWE said apparently according to JR himself, to give more updates when there are none. Oh my God. Now I'm honestly in disbelief. DG says, this was an eye-opening episode. If you didn't think Vince was a dirty son of a gun before, you did now. We'll get into that. I'm going to get into my thoughts on Vince in just a sec. So, let's talk a little bit about Jerry Lawler. I mentioned that Jerry Lawler knew that Owen was falling, but then as soon as he fell into the ring, I had, like, as soon as they were talking about how Jerry was as pale, as white as a ghost, and then the way he was talking about the thing on the broadcast, I felt like he knew that Owen was dead the moment the accident happened. Like the moment Owen instantly hit the ring the way he did, because it was his tone, it was his tone. So after 15 minutes, again, Owen was stretchered out of the arena. Everyone was like getting very concerned, very worried. I think the Godfather mentioned that that Owen fell, and then he went to go check on him, and he was just like shook beyond belief. And like I said before, WWE, like, I know it's been 20 years, but WWE, what they could have done was stop the show. They could have stopped the show. They should have stopped the show when the accident happened. And I feel like arena security could have taken larger responsibility by calling the Kansas City police, so it can start an investigation right away. By continuing on with the show and arena security not acting accordingly, there was no an investigation couldn't be done, and a larger case was also stopped from happening. So the show continues. There's about 5 more matches, including the main event between Steve Austin and The Undertaker for the WWE title. It was around an hour in that JR was told to give another update when, yet again, there was none to give. But Kevin Dunn, I forgot what position Kevin Dunn was in at the time. Let me check. Kevin Dunn. WWE. He's the vice president for WWE. So Kevin Dunn told him that Owen passed away, and told JR to tell the live audience, tell the live viewers, in 10 seconds, to tell the viewers. It was like, God damn, this really happened. It was like, and JR went on to tell the viewers that the unfortunate news that Owen has died, and you could he said, he would say in his tone, he would say in the doc, that his tone that night reflected on how he was able to give that news. And I feel bad for JR, man. I feel bad for JR for having to share that news the way that he did, because it didn't give him enough time. They didn't give him enough time to process this news. Kevin Dunn told them that Owen Hart passed away, but he has the audacity to tell JR, oh, Owen Hart died. Now you have 10 seconds to tell the live audience. What the fuck? It's this man that just fell in the ring and you allowed to continue the show, back in 1999 again, by the way, and now you're gonna tell a commentator this terrible news, and he only has 10 seconds to process it. My God, this Kevin Dunn guy, I don't know how much of a rep he has in the wrestling community, but this just exposes him as a big piece of shit. I'm sorry. This incident right here, this little thing right here, shows that he gave no shits about the seriousness of the situation. And, Kevin Dunn, what the fuck? And then last but not least, in this takeaway, I want to mention that according to Jim Cornette, that the last thing that Owen said was, "Look out." So, oh man, that was something that I found crazy. It was his last words were, "Look out." So this stunt didn't need to happen. So my last takeaway, the aftermath. The aftermath of the accident. So we now know how Martha Hart initial reaction was the night that Owen died. So she gets a call from Vince McMahon, who Martha thought was Owen, pranking her, because she mentioned that Owen was always a prankster. But no, it was really Vince McMahon telling them that Owen fell, but Vince didn't have immediate answers. Like he couldn't tell her that she like it was he's in X condition or he's outright dead. So what Vince told her was that someone else will call you. I'm like, God damn, like why? It's like it was like she had to learn from a doctor at the Truman Medical Center in Kansas City, where where the doctor tried to convince her to fly down so she can hear the news, but like we already know where this was going. So Raw's Owen happened the night after Over the Edge, and a couple days later, it was either a couple days later or a week after, Owen's funeral happens. I do want to mention, by the way, that that Martha was horrified by by Owen's body, like how it looked following the fall, like in the funeral home, but she was comforted by his hair, so that was a fact that she brought up. So in the funeral, in the final, I guess it was the final, I don't know if this was the eulogy or the final speech at the funeral, Martha promised a day of reckoning. I don't know what that meant. It was probably like a day of reckoning against the WWE or for justice for Owen, but probably both. So following Owen's funeral, Martha and her children flew to Kansas City, flew to Kemper Arena to investigate and see the site of Owen's death for themselves, so they wouldn't have to question what actually what was the reasoning behind Owen's death. And as they were walking on the catwalk, seeing the ring below them or above them, sorry, Martha grew suspicious that something went wrong, because she knew that Owen was very cautious and he didn't want to take any uncalculated risks. So after we're done on the catwalk and done seeing the ring, the Kansas City police showed Martha the following: Owen's blue blazer outfit, and I want to show you guys this right here. I had it earlier, but fuck. It was pretty much the clip, as I'm looking for it, it was pretty much the clip that was meant, that held Owen Hart that night, or that was at least supposed to hold him. So let me look for it again. Okay, here it is. Let's open that. Okay, let me pull this up. Yeah, this is the clip that held Owen, and she revealed it for the first time ever. So she describes this as the clip that was meant to hold sailboats. According to her, it was designed to release onloads. And I quote, "When you have a load on it, when you just click it, it opens immediately because the design is to let the mast open." So what WWE was looking for with Owen's stunt, basically what she's saying is that they wanted a quick release for this blue blazer stunt at Over the Edge. So once Martha saw the clip, she got very upset, and after looking at state documents to piece together what Owen's last day looked like, which included things like the following: Owen being approached by rigger Bobby Talbert, who was hired by the WWE to practice the stunt. Martha said that it was a different setup. And she mentioned that she didn't know if they were going to do a quick, like she personally didn't know if they were going to do a quick release or the lock and carabiner, which I presume is like a much stronger clip. And then what the riggers wanted was a quick release with the setup, but Martha said that Talbot shouldn't rig anybody because of his inexperience in doing so. So, back to me. So after enough evidence, she believed there was negligence, and I'll get into that later. And as such, she filed the wrongful death lawsuit against Vince McMahon and WWE that I mentioned at the beginning of this live stream. So we begin to know a little bit more about how exactly the lawsuit went down. Not in terms of legally, but like behind the scenes, we learned that Vince filed a countersuit because he wanted the lawsuit in Connecticut because there's no punitive damages. Let me see what punitive means because I'm saying all these terms and I don't know what it means. Punitive. Inflicting damages. Okay. All right. So there would be no inflicting damages on McMahon. So he pretty much, if he was found like guilty or like not guilty, he'd be allowed to go off scot-free. So Martha would have to is pretty much dealing with two lawsuits here, one in Missouri and one in Connecticut. Wow, Vince. Goddamn. As if Vince wasn't bad enough, like with this whole Saudi thing, like trying to pull this lawsuit in favor of himself. It's like when he technically caused the death of one of his wrestlers. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. So as for the Hart family themselves, they were pretty divided over the lawsuit. Some stay silent, and I was kind of disappointed by this. Others were actually others were actually convinced to side with the WWE. So what they did was steal Martha's legal documents and give it to the WWE. So the WWE knew what Martha was gonna do against them. It's what the fuck. So after a year of a court battle, WWE and Martha reached a settlement of $18 million out of court, but Martha never wanted the money. She wanted justice and accountability against the WWE. She wanted WWE to take responsibility for the death of Owen, for the death of her husband. Reaction and actions of the Hart family was nuts. Like from the sound of it, I bet it was. So the episode wraps up with the interviewee saying that Owen's death was one of, if not the worst moments of their lives, and especially JR and Jerry Lawler, having them, they witnessed it right there and then. It's like, I feel really terrible for them. It's like they witnessed death live. It's like horrible. And then, so my final 2 points about this takeaway is Martha creating the Owen Hart Foundation, with the money she got in the lawsuit, to honor Owen's generosity and kindness. And one last point about this, Martha, you all know why Owen Hart hasn't been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And well, for the people that are still asking for Owen in the WWE Hall of Fame, you're never gonna get him, never. And you know why? Because Martha will not allow him. Will not allow the WWE to induct Owen into their Hall of Fame, because She won't allow a company that is technically responsible for his death to be celebrated in the Hall of Fame. And that was Dark Side of the Ring, the final days of Owen Hart. And as I progressed through this episode, the more it went on, the more disgusted and outright disappointed I was at Vince and WWE for their negligence towards this situation. As if I wasn't already disappointed at the WWE like with today's product. It's like, this was just eye-opening, you know? It's like, I learned so much about this situation that it's just like an outright shitty situation. And WWE like didn't. It was all because of WWE's negligence. It's like they tried this stunt at Survivor Series 6 months prior to Over the Edge, and the rigging system that they used was fine. It was secure. It held Owen Hart. And yeah, he did get stuck, but that was like for comedic effect. Michael Cole was playing up. It's like, he's stuck, he can't get out, and then someone kept punching him, and it's like, we all know this was for comedic effect. But it's like, why did WWE need to change it? Why did WWE need to like go out of their way to try to parody WCW, who pretty much was done for in the Monday Night Wars anyway? Why did WWE need to rub salt in the wound by trying to spoof Sting at Over the Edge with Owen Hart? I don't know. It was a really dumb decision. As for the rigging system, WWE went full on Mr. Krabs. They decided to channel their inner Eugene H. Krabs. They went cheap. That's all I could say. They wanted to save their money, but as often, saving money doesn't always lead to quality results. And look what happened. The rigging system fucked up, and the rest is history. That's all I will say about that. And I will say this: the fallout was fucked up, man. The fallout's pretty fucked up. It's like, again, I'm even more in disapproval of WWE continuing Over the Edge in 1999. But yeah, I know it's been 20. Oh, tomorrow would have been 21 years since Over the Edge 1999 happened. But again, it's like, I'm still gonna say it. I am still in complete disapproval of WWE letting the show continue, because Owen was unconscious in the ring. His blood was even on the ring canvas at like when he was getting tended to and after he got tended to. His blood stayed on the ring canvas, and WWE never bothered to change it. This was a crime scene the moment the accident happened, and WWE should have stopped the show. And because they didn't, an investigation was like not as effective as it could have been. And shame on, like, I'm sorry to say this, but shame on the arena security that night at Kemper Arena. They didn't step up. They didn't step up to call the Kansas City police so they could step in and stop the show to investigate, because this was a serious accident. This was a serious situation, and I'm just very disappointed learning about this. And then all I could say left is, like, you know, like signs like JR's 10 seconds of being able to process Owen's death, Kevin Dunn's stupid decision to tell him the news in an untimely manner, the wrestlers visibly like this close to breaking down because of the Owen situation. It's like, these are all signs these are all signs that WWE shouldn't have continued over the edge that night, but they did anyway. They did anyway. And I don't know, it's like I have this I've lost some respect for the company because of it, you know? And I also find it messed up that some members of the Hart family were actually against Martha for suing the WWE. I think Brett was also even against Martha for suing the WWE. I'm like, this is your brother that just passed away. It's like, and you're against her husband, Owen's wife, trying to sue the WWE just because she's gonna lose. It's like, no, you all have to support her. Like, come on. It's like one of their own just died in a freak accident. It's like that's their bloodline, and that died in a freak accident technically caused by the WWE. Yet they are siding with the technical murderers by giving them as much legal documentation as possible to use against Martha. I don't know, man. I don't know. This situation's fucked. Lastly, all I could say is, in regards to Owen, in the Hall of Fame, like I said before, Martha doesn't want him to be celebrated by the same company that killed him, i.e. the WWE, and I completely agree with her. I wouldn't want to agree to the WWE celebrating a man that they technically killed, literally. And why would I? It's like, sure, he has all the accolades, he has the personality, he has a really good personality in real life. He seems to be, he was a family man in real life, a really good father, but it's like the WWE was negligent and let him die. And on a side note, WWE's Hall of Fame today is a complete joke anyway. They just let anybody in the Hall of Fame nowadays. Our own president, freaking Orange Man, is in the Hall of Fame. Come on. It's like the WWE Hall of Fame nowadays is just an event to go see your favorite legends, because they're not on Raw, SmackDown, NXT, or even whenever they can't, or Mania, or even Mania Access. The Hall of Fame's just there, just because it gives an opportunity for people to see their favorite legends. Without a physical Hall of Fame like the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, the WWE Hall of Fame is pointless. Brett not being in the doc threw me off till she explained the lawsuit. You'd think after the Brett screw job and now Owen, they'd want to make Vince pay. Interesting. So overall, the Owen death was a really fucked up situation. Now that we know more about it, through this Dark Side of the Ring episode, I stand by it. It's a really fucked up situation. It was caused by WWE's unwillingness to fully protect Hart with a proper rigging system, WWE's negligence towards the situation as it happened, WWE's failure to act on the situation, because as evidenced through just stretch him out of the arena and hope that he's fine, and just feed JR updates when there's none. Complete lack of action by WWE. Complete lack of action makes this situation all WWE's fault. Because they didn't protect Owen, but they also could have not went with the stunt at all to protect him. Unbelievable. This is an unbelievable story. And I don't blame Martha at all. I don't blame Martha at all for like feeling bitterness. Like I know like a lot of times passed, so she probably doesn't have the same resentment against the WWE, but other than she's not gonna let WWE put Owen in the Hall of Fame, like quote unquote Hall of Fame. But it's like, man, it's like I just feel awful for her, man. I feel awful. But what do you guys think about this Owen Hart episode for Dark Side of the Ring? Let me know in the live chat, or if you're watching this on demand, let me know in the comments, because this was just, I don't know, this was just absolutely like this disturbing and this, I don't know. It's like I don't like bashing on the episode itself, because I like the details that I learned, but it was just like hearing about the full story. It just makes me feel disgusted towards WWE. You know? It's just terrible. Just terrible. All right, our last topic for today is the injuries. Yeah, the injury-riddled AEW Dynamite. So tomorrow, as I mentioned at the start of the show, is Double or Nothing. Again, it was supposed to be at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, but due to the coronavirus pandemic, it's moved to the Daly's Palace in Jacksonville, and one match will also take place in the actual Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium, TIAA Bank Stadium. However, the worst news that you can get prior, like a couple, like just 3, 4, or 5 days prior to a show, is injury news. That's news you do not want to hear, like just days before a pay-per-view. And that's what we got on Wednesday and Thursday. I first want to see if there's any updates to this situation though. Injuries. Okay, so there's no updates as of now, but I'm just going to discuss them anyway. So Brian Alvarez, and Dave Meltzer, yes, that Dave Meltzer, a Figure 4 Weekly reported several injuries from this week's AEW Dynamite ahead of tomorrow's Double or Nothing pay-per-view event. Starting with Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks. Matt Jackson, who returned this past Wednesday along with his brother Nick. Matt may have injured his left rib in a spot where he and his brother Nick dove from the stands of TIAA Bank Stadium onto the inner circle. Alvarez mentioned that it was either a break, torn cartilage, or a bad bruise. Jackson was active in the brawl, even taking chair shots and knees to the ribs, and only visibly showing pain right before Dynamite went on the air. In an update to that story, Matt, let me see here. Matt Jackson said he's hoping for a bruised cartilage. The doctor seems to think that's what it is, and he said that he'll be wrestling on Saturday. So that's some good news there. But there's another injury that happened that looked kind of bad. That involves Ray Phoenix of the Lucha Brothers. He was injured following a botched big dive spot involving himself and the competitors of tomorrow's casino ladder match. Phoenix attempted a springboard spot, but he landed just short of the competitors, causing him to land hard on his back and hip outside of the ring. So Meltzer confirmed Thursday afternoon that Phoenix will be fine and good to go for Saturday, but that spot did not look good at all. If you saw Dynamite on Wednesday, Phoenix did a springboard, I think it was a springboard moonsault, and then he did it, but the competitors were either so far off that Phoenix landed the way he did, or the competitors like knew Phoenix was coming, but they failed to get into position to catch him. So I don't know. There's a little bit of negligence by both wrestlers, by both sides. Then here's the biggest injury that I found concerning out of all this. Dr. Britt Baker, as you know, that I'm kind of high up on Dr. Britt Baker, especially since she turned heel. She's been having outstanding character work ever since turning heel. She's been playing up to her real life dentist job and using that as a gimmick pretty well. Her wrestling could still use some work, however. But on Wednesday's Dynamite, she may have seriously injured her right knee, according to Alvarez and Meltzer. In a tag team match with Nyla Rose, Chris Statlander, and Hikaru Kushida, in a spot where Statlander and Shida slammed Nyla Rose into a seated Britt Baker's right knee, which was bent. So they slammed Britt Baker, Nyla Rose onto Britt Baker's knee, so she was seated on the turnbuckle, on the bottom turnbuckle, and then her knee was bent, and then they slammed Rose onto Britt Baker's knee. So after a pinfall attempt, Baker was seen clutching her right knee, and Rose had to drag her into the corner so the doctors can see her, and so Rose can tag herself in. As for Baker, if the injury is not serious, Baker slated to face Chris Statlander at Double or Nothing. Again, I really hope the injuries are not too serious. But according to Alvarez and Meltzer, that Matt Jackson and Rey Fenix are competing on Saturday, but the status for Britt Baker is still up in the air. But this goes to show that what have I been saying for months on end? I really don't like the constant spot fest that AEW puts on week after week. Now, granted, they kind of have been toning it down. I'll give them that. But they're still pretty consistent. The spot fests have been pretty consistent week after week, but they have been toned down in the last couple of weeks. But the big spots, there still too many unnecessary big spots, big meaningless big spots. And relying on the meaningless big spots, the meaningless spot fests are gonna bite AEW in the ass at some point in time. And if the injury to Britt Baker is serious, is much more serious than Meltzer and Alvarez have indicated, then they need to keep toning it down on these tied work rate matches. It's seriously, come on, people. I get it. We're in a new generation of wrestling where the slow-paced action or this story-driven, whatever story-driven reality we're in, that we were in is long gone. But I don't give a shit. I really don't give a shit. These high work rate matches or these spot fests that have no stories, no characters, and no background whatsoever are the reasons why nobody gives a shit about wrestling. It's nobody outside the hardcore or core, the middle ground fan base care about wrestling. Come on, let's be real here. And I still question every time I watch AEW, every match that doesn't have a storyline in it. Why do they need a big spot? Why do they need big spot after big spot after big spot, or and a match that's pretty much just a spot fest? Why? So it can make every smart that watches this Wednesday night jack off between AEW and NXT blow their load every time someone does a big flip or a big super kick or an insane ass move. Every time this happens, get real, people. Get real. Like I said before, AEW can have all the big spot fest or big spots that they want. They need to balance it with an element of storytelling. They need to balance it with character development. The reason why I tune out of AEW a lot is because there's no characters. The only characters that I'm interested in AEW are Britt Baker, the Dark Order in some sense, Pac. I'm starting to get a little bit interested in Orange Cassidy. The Cody Rhodes, Lance Archer TNT final that's happening tomorrow. MJF. There's probably a bunch more that I forgot. There's also Jon Moxley, but he hasn't really done much as of late, even as world champion. But that's because he hasn't been on Dynamite because of the pandemic. But you get the point. I'm more into the story-driven, like characters. The characters that have and actually have a backbone, but behind them. The wrestlers that have a backbone, a character, a story behind them. Like all these feuds that have a short and long-term story behind them. Not the meaningless spot fest that you see every Wednesday night on Dynamite or in the indie circuit. Come on. And if you think I'm just white knighting for WWE, then WWE is guilty of this as well. They've been guilty of this as well. Come on. Like, look at almost every match in NXT outside of Karrion Kross, Tommaso Ciampa, the pre-new Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae, Rhea Ripley, and Io Shirai. Like, WWE is guilty of this as well. And if you want to look at the main roster wise, look at everyone outside of the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins, and actually that's pretty much it. The Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins. That's pretty much the entirety of the entirety of WWE outside of Cross, Ciampa, the new Johnny Gargano, Candice LeRae, Rhea Ripley, and Io Shirai, and the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins. Everything in WWE is just like AEW. A meaningless spot fest, meaningless big spot matches. Yeah, nothing. No spice, no substance, no nothing. So, why am I ranting about this again? Like, why am I tracing my dislike for the constant big spots in the spot fest in AEW? Because it's coming to bite them in the ass. It bit them in the ass here with these injuries. Now, granted, in fairness, Matt Jackson and Ray Phoenix are fine for Double or Nothing. Britt Baker is the one to worry about because the Statlander and Sheeta didn't need to do that spot there. Actually, they didn't. Like, I don't blame. I shouldn't have to blame Sheeta and Statlander. They didn't need to be booked to do that spot. AEW management doesn't need to book these meaningless spots. In fact, they need to cut back on these meaningless spots and spot fest. Either that, or they gotta have these big meaningless spots and spot fest, and balance it with good storytelling and character development. Pretty much what they're doing with a few of these storylines on Dynamite. Otherwise, it's just going to lead to even more injuries, which I don't want to have happen, but it's just a concern at this point. It's just concerning. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on the injuries, and I hope everyone will be fine in regards to these reported injuries. I know, again, Matt, Phoenix are fine, but we want them to be 100%, and I hope the knee injury to Britt Baker is not too serious, but the injury seemed pretty like it looked. It didn't look. I couldn't tell where the injury happened. Like she didn't react to the injury like right away. Like after she was pinned, like that's when we know that she got injured. But I hope it's not anything pretty serious. I think Alvarez mentioned it could be a torn ACL, which I do not want to happen. So I'm really hoping that everyone will be fine going forward and the injuries are not too serious. But again, these meaningless spots, these meaningless big spots are gonna like create a larger risk for injuries if they keep doing it. So those are just my 2 cents on that. But what do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments below. I know I'm starting to drop frames, but stay with me. Stay with me, OBS. Stay with me, Internet, as we close off this show. Let me know what you guys think about these topics, your thoughts on these topics in the comments. If you're watching this on demand, if you're watching this live, leave me your final thoughts in the comments, in the chat right there. And make sure, if you're not already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit the bell for post notifications so you'll know every time I am live streaming like I am right now on Dylan Lasagna Live, or whenever I do a non-Dylan Lasagna Live episode, and as well as whenever a video goes up or I post on my community tab. And if you would like, you can follow me on social media. I'm at Dylan Lasagna on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure you leave a like so it gets recommended on YouTube. Because even if I'm a dead channel, I still love to do this. I still like doing YouTube, even if I'm a dead channel, and even if, YouTube's gonna just become a full-on cable television network. But anyway, everyone, always be delicious. This was Dylan Lasagna Live, episode number 58. Not sure what I'm going to talk about next week, but we'll see if there's going to be any news for next week. But anyway, everyone, always be delicious, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.